Coogs House. The Houston Cougars were left off the media's all Big 12 preseason team, but they have 3 new transfers that may very well make the end of season all Big 12 team. Let's jump on in.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, to break down all things Cougs. If you're a UH fan or just a hater can stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way, you can latest on the Cougs into your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day as an everydayer. More fun stuff later to come about rewarding some everydayers. I appreciate you commenting each and every day. Make sure you comment down below. We are giving away stuff every 250 subscribers. The next one of those being 1,500. So as we approach that, make sure you're liking, commenting on videos to be entered in the contest. And we're going to keep giving away these hats. I've got black. We've got navy. We've got like a tan color. We've got some stuff to give away on the hat. So make sure you comment and subscribe down below. I'll be sure to get you a hat potentially. Thank you all again so much for subscribing to the YouTube channel as we get to that 1,500 mark. Today's episode is going to be all about talking about a couple guys that I think Houston and Houston fans should be really, really excited about moving forward. We talked a lot this summer about the transfers in, but we need to talk about how many of these guys can really make an impactful difference. So first, about like the concept of having a bunch of new transfers. Second, we'll talk some about like 3 guys that have a real chance of making an all Big 12 team. And then the third and final segment, I want to talk some about a couple guys that have that shot as well, maybe a little bit more of an outside shot. Let's jump on in. First, let's hear from some guys at Big 12 Media Days, Hassan and Nelson and Coach Dana Holgerson, about what they think about having so many new guys in.
You moved down to linebacker. A whole bunch of new faces transferred in the positions behind you. What can you tell us about the new DBs and stuff? I mean, you're not so far removed from that room, right?
I can just say like this, be on the lookout for Antonio Brooks, AJ Haulcy, who transferred from New Mexico. That kid alone had a video game performance last year. 24 tackles at strong safety, then catching the interception. Man, like, you don't hear about stuff like that. That's once in a lifetime. So, got Brandon Mack transfer from Ole Miss. We got a lot of guards I can't even think of off the top of my head. I'm just excited to see my teammates, you know what I'm saying? We got a lot of older guys on the team, so it's like a lot of guys with their last year back against the wall, and they just ready to prove themselves.
Yeah, I feel like that's all we do is reload. Like, I don't feel like, well, the way Coach Early recruits, like Coach Early, I feel like he can do whatever he wants. You know, I feel like we got some young guys who's ready to step up and take that next step, so I feel like it's all about reloading. I don't feel like we lost anything.
You mentioned reloading, you mentioned SECAT, but you're kind of the veteran. What message have you been telling? Like, you got to tell people what it is, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Every time I go to practice and stuff, I'm like, man, it's crazy that I'm a veteran now. Like, I still kind of feel like a young guy, you know, at heart. But, you know, I mean, I just try to lead by example. I just try to be the best I can be every single day, be consistent every single day. So hopefully have some guys follow behind me. I feel like it's about time to take that next step. I feel like it's time for me to really go ahead and take that next step as far as being an overall complete player. Nobody wants to play. Nobody wants to see me paying attention anymore. It's time for me to actually go ahead and be that person that everybody wants, that they know I'm capable of being. So I feel like it's time for me to take a step into that role.
So yeah, I mean, Donovan, he came from Texas Tech. You know, he won a lot of games there, so he's really experienced. And, you know, just like Hip was saying, you know, Clayton was an exceptional quarterback. I mean, he got drafted to the Cardinals, might have a chance to actually start. So that's some big shoes to fill. But Donovan, I mean, he's done a great job ever since he got here. You know, he's understood his role. And same with Lucas. You know, Lucas was able to really like see what it is to be a leader, be a captain under Clayton, and be a successful quarterback. And every day, you know, they're pushing each other, getting in the huddle, you know, telling the receivers what to do, telling us to play. But they're both confident, you know, like, so you really can't say, oh, this one outweighs the other, you know, like Lucas is ready to go, Donovan is ready to go, And that makes me happy and makes me confident being a center, especially knowing that I got two guys I can really rely on, no matter the circumstance. They could both be in there. It don't matter. Like, they can both play the game.
He's a coach's kid. He's got 3 years experience at this level. He's been starting quarterback. He's been backup quarterback. He's been team captain. He's been second fiddle. He's been the guy. I just think his upbringing as a coach's kid prepares you for that. And so he's mature and smart enough to come in and let it naturally happen. Because if you force it on people, it doesn't work. And so he was smart enough to come in and just kind of, be in the background, be in the shadows, learn how things work, let the game come to him. I've seen a different Donovan in summer. He's also smart enough to understand that real football games are around the corner, and you better get going now. And so I think he's done a good job with that, of letting things naturally happen. He's a guy that people gravitate to. Lucas Coley is a competitor, and he's not giving anything up. And he comes and he competes, and people gravitate towards him too. I can promise you, we're going to need both of them. I really don't want to talk about a specific one. There's 42 of them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's a lot of new guys that I don't know enough about because I haven't seen enough. We didn't tackle one time in spring, and then we added 26 more people in June. So, the days of me evaluating people in spring practice are pretty much over. And I think our calendar is going to change, and we're going to be able to practice more when we have our team, which will be able to form more and better assessments on kids. Yeah, it was. Obviously when we lost a guy, you got to go out and replace that guy. And so, we did what everybody else does. You lose a key piece, you open up the transfer portal and you look for what's in there, right? And so, obviously I know Tony from recruiting him back 4 years ago. It didn't have any impact on him wanting something new. I mean, there's an internal clock for a lot of kids that expires. And the best time it expires is when you graduate. I'm a bigger proponent in one-time transfer for graduates than I are undergraduates. But when you graduate, you have options. And so, he's played in either 21 or 31, I think it's 31 Big 12 football games. That's pretty important, and so I'm very comfortable with our running back room right now, especially because we added somebody with that kind of experience. We'll see here pretty quick, I think so. I think a lot of the bodies going, a lot of the bodies leaving the program, I say that the opposite way. A lot of the bodies coming into the program look different than the bodies leaving the program. We did a pretty extensive test on what our team looked like compared to Big 12 teams, from a height and weight perspective. I'm not talking about talent. At the end of the day, you want talent over measurables, but you need to start chipping away at the measurables. And we have got bigger at every position. He did it in year one, which was pretty remarkable. That team is used to winning, obviously, but so are we. We won 20 games in 2 years and back-to-back bowl games. There's only a handful of teams in the country that's done that. So our guys know how to win, and we expect to win. We expect to compete. We've brought in a lot of people that are more talented than what we've recruited and more experienced, more Big 12 experienced. I think there's 8 guys on our team that have Big 12 experience. So yeah, it's about meshing all that together. I can't tell you how that's going to happen, when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen. My job's to put the best product out there and work tirelessly to get us to a point to where we can be competitive, and I plan on doing that. I like our team, I like where we're at. I got to get to know them a little bit better, collectively as a team.
All right, so as you heard from Hassan and Nelson and Dana, there's a lot of excitement about all of these new faces, and for good reason. The new faces coming in are talented. The new faces coming in are experienced. Dana mentioned how many of the new faces, weren't at spring ball. So he's like the guys have all gotten to see one another play finally in the last couple of weeks. And the excitement about like how many snaps, how many games these new guys have played, right? This is not your incoming freshman class in a traditional old school college football setting. And I think that that's what a lot of Houston Cougar fans are struggling with. They look at like the recruiting numbers and like, man, like we didn't get that many commits in 2023. We don't have as many other people in 2024. What's going on? But what Dana and his staff have very clearly identified is we want dudes that can play now. And they're looking for guys like transfers, like they just got so many in the 2023 class that can come in and play right away. And they're excited to say it. And frankly, I love that Hassan Hippolyte, like when I asked him about that at media days, he got like giddy. He started talking about all the DBs and the DNs, and he got excited about just like watching these guys work this summer has clearly sparked something in Hippolyte, right? Like, and that's a fun thing to see happen in real time in a guy that's been a team captain for a couple of years, right? Like he has been a face of this football team for a couple seasons now, and he's giddy over the new guys coming in. Now, I want to talk some in the second segment about which of those new guys have all Big 12 potential, because I think there's a couple. In the third segment, I'll talk about a couple more that like maybe a little bit further, like more room to grow to reach that potential. But first, let's talk about potentially building a championship team at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts, accessories, head to eBay Motors, eBay Guaranteed Fit. You can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage and look for the green check to know if the parts will fit or your money back. Just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be right back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. All right. So I said I want to talk some about these guys that have all Big 12 potential. I got three right here in the second segment that have all Big 12 potential. Like they just have to play their best ball. Houston has to play its best ball, make sure they get recognized. Obviously, team wins matter. And then in the third segment, I got a couple guys that like might also, reach that ceiling. And these are all transfers. All these guys listed today are transfers. We'll talk more about as it closes their season, other guys. But first, David Ugwoegbu. Okay. David Ugwoegbu is a transfer out of Oklahoma. He played linebacker there, and he's a 4-star linebacker on Rivals out of high school. He's raised from KD7 Lakes, transferred after several years to Oklahoma, back home to the University of Houston, and is transitioning to an edge rushing position. He had 109 tackles last year and has 16 career tackles for loss. But I want to point out that he is transitioning to an edge rush position after being like an all energy, run around like his hair's on fire kind of guy at Oklahoma. Crazy high energy, crazy high motor while he's at OU. And I know they got rocked by UT Austin in the game in Dallas or whatever, but truthfully, he is a high energy, high motor player that I think Houston fans are going to really, really enjoy in Houston. And in his career, last season, he had 7.5 sacks and was lined up on the line of scrimmage just 43 times. Now, I know some of those sacks as a linebacker come from a little bit of depth or, whatever. But this guy was a great pass rusher, rated in the top third of all linebackers in pass rushing across college football last season. And he was only on the line 43 times. So I feel like as Houston moves him into a edge position entirely, and we use the skill set, like his best attributes all the time, right? Just become a pass rusher. Every third and long, you'll see David Ugwoegbu on the football field, right? Like that's going to be a guarantee. I feel like those stats will be exacerbated, and he's going to become the kind of guy that even if he's just a pass rushing specialist at 6'4", 240, so he's not like an every down defensive end necessarily. Maybe he proves me wrong, right? But we'll figure something out there. If he's just a pass rushing specialist, but he gets 10 sacks, 12 sacks, how could you leave him off of an all Big 12 team, especially when you look at the pass happy Big 12 league, that it's not like the Big 12 like 2012, 13, where everyone runs some version of the air raid, but it is a very offensively dynamic league still. And if he can get after the quarterback, it's going to be hard to ignore him. The other new transfer on the defensive line that I talked a little bit to Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss about is Brandon Mack. Brandon Mack comes in having played just 12 defensive non-special teams snaps at Ole Miss in several years there after redshirting. So I think a lot of people are writing this guy off as, well, Brandon Mack, he didn't get to play at all there. What's the big deal? And first of all, I'm talking to Steven a little bit, again, at Locked On Ole Miss. He said that everyone, locker room type guy, everyone loves Brandon Mack. So I think it's going to be really easy to root for from that standpoint. So get to know him. It's going to be nice to root for him. But also, this is a guy that kind of got screwed at Ole Miss based on some stuff out of his control. He was redshirted, and then he got hurt. So he missed some time early in his career. And then Ole Miss has had a bunch of coaching changes and change over defense, stuff like that. And the position he was recruited to come there and play, a 3-4 pass rushing outside linebacker type guy, has kind of disappeared from their defense. He's no longer necessarily getting the best opportunities. That's why he looked to transfer. That's why he came to Houston. But he does have 4 years of SEC program under his belt. He was a 3-star edge rusher out of the state of Alabama. When he went to Ole Miss, had a bunch of SEC offers, widely regarded as a pass rusher out of high school. His body has changed some. Some places list him at 6'3", 230. Some places say 260. Some places say 245. The Houston website says 245, so that's what I'm going with. But Steven at Locked On Ole Miss was saying at Ole Miss, he's more like 260, trying to play more like a traditional end in a 3-4 because they were trying to move him around some. Right? So stuff has been moved on him. We'll see what he shows up looking like in person in just a couple weeks at this point. But I will say that I think that this may be a chance for him to really blossom because his role is more lined up with his skill set here. He's going to be, again, another pass rushing specialist. He may be more of an every down guy than Ugwoegbu. We'll see how that works. They both have linebacker experience. But you will see them both on the field in third and long kind of situations. And again, this guy was a high-end speed rushing pass rusher out of high school, and everyone recognized it. And assuming he still has that speed and is completely recovered from his injuries, I don't see why he wouldn't be that same guy they were projecting him as out of high school. The other thing that I think is interesting about both these guys, Ugwoegbu and Brandon Mack, is that they're both on the field on third and long situations throughout the season, or both in the field and passing downs throughout the season, right? You have the Brian Early effect, which is that they'll be more finely tuned in their craft. He's as good a defensive line coach in the country. We've seen him continually turn out guys to the NFL. We talked to Ruben about it last week. We'll talk about it all year long. We talk about Brian Early all the time, right? So we know that they will be more fine-tuned in their craft just from working with Brian Early. When you have both of those guys, and then in pass situations, you move Nelson Caesar into the 3 technique, and you got Dot Nwankwo at the nose tackle, or any host of other Houston defensive linemen. Suddenly, no one gets double teamed. Suddenly, all those great pass rushers are getting one-on-one pass rushes, right? Except for, Dot Nwankwo probably gets double teamed because he's a nose tackle, and you have to double Dot. But what that means is that in one-on-one pass rush attempts, I'm trusting David, I'm trusting Brandon, I'm trusting Nelson. These guys are going to get loose. These guys are going to get free. Sack Avenue is going to be a real thing once again in the Big 12. And in doing that, these guys are going to accumulate the kind of stats that are eye-opening, popping. They jump off the page. That's why some of these guys, someone on the defensive line, if not multiple, will be an all-conference type of guy. And Ugwoegbu and Mack are these. They're these. Ugwoegbu's got the speed and some power, and I love watching him play so fast. Brandon Mack had the speed out of high school, has the length, has the arms, all that kind of stuff. We'll see if it translates and see he still has it after some time hurt. Right? I think he does for what I'm hearing, but I just worth some time hurt. I think that's worth pointing out. Those guys will have that. That's 2 guys that I think have real shots at the all-conference teams at the end of the season. The other one that I can't believe didn't make the I don't think most Big 12 media was paying attention to Houston if they weren't putting this guy on all-conference teams. Adari A.J. Haulcy, right, was as good a freshman defensive back as anyone in the country last year at New Mexico. He led all freshmen in all positions in tackles last season. He's more of a safety, so we'll see what kind of a safety Houston plays him as. He was, and for what it's worth, Pro Football Focus had him as a 3rd-team all preseason Big 12 as a true sophomore this upcoming season. He's a Fort Bend Marshall product, so he went to New Mexico, but he's coming back home. I think there'll be some comfortability there. And I think that, first of all, his 85.5 grade on Pro Football Focus means that he's in the right place doing the right thing at the right time over 85% of the time as a true freshman last season. He was in the box for 450 of his snaps, also in the slot for another 70, and at free safety for 120. So he does not work the edges. He's inside those receivers, right? Inside those spots. That's kind of where he's lining up the most. Worth pointing out that he played that many snaps and barely played in the first 2 weeks of the season. So again, like, this is a guy that is very, very experienced, even with just 1 year at New Mexico before coming to Houston. I think most people see him as a guy that makes plays and makes reads at a really, really high level and coming down here in the run game or breaking off when the ball's been thrown and going to make a play once the ball's out in the field, right? I think he does both those things very, very well in watching New Mexico tape. And I think what's going to be interesting is that when we talk about stats and pass rate stats and Mack or Ugwoegbu, I don't know how you'll be able to ignore Haulcy racking up similar stats at Houston in the Big 12 again, right? If he has a 12-tackle game, a 12-tackle game, a 12-tackle game 3 different times for that Big 12 play, that's going to be hard to ignore. And a 12-tackle game is not out of the realm of possibility at any point for A.J. Haulcy. He had over 20 in a single game back at New Mexico, right? So, like, this is a guy that's used to finding the football. I think he'll do that at a high, high level and high rate at Houston. I think all 3 of those guys are going to rack up stats that makes them all conference type of guys. Now, in the third segment, I want to talk some about other guys worth mentioning that could have an outside shot at also getting on that all-conference sheet after transferring in. So let's start with one that I think I heard the most buzz about in spring ball, and that was Isaiah Hamilton. Now, Isaiah Hamilton's a 6'1", 165-pound corner with Channelview High School, right? Houston. Went to Texas Southern, Houston, and is now at the University of Houston, right? So I think it's going to be a hometown favorite very, very quickly. I think what was impressive to most people that talked about him after spring, because I talked to a few people that got to watch the spring practices, and hearing them say things about him, these 2 or 3 people, 3 people mentioned him, 2 were impressed by him. 1 was not paying as much attention to DB, is more an offensive guy. But anyway, all pointed out that Hamilton is hyper competitive, right? This is a kid that likes winning, and in one-on-one type scenarios does it a lot. Now, I think that's really, really important for a corner because, truthfully, if you can run cat coverage, just I got that cat, you got that cat, we're golden, right? So if you can find ways to match up Isaiah Hamilton, he is 6'1", 165. He's not going to help out a whole lot in the run game at 165 anyway. Put him out on their best receiver out wide and say, you got that dude, right? He enjoys winning matchups. He had 5 picks last season, was first team all SWAC. 2 of those picks went back the other way for touchdowns, right? So he's a guy that understands when the ball's in the air. This is a 50-50 battle. I can go get it. And I think there's, again, that same comfortability. He just went to school across the street or across town his whole life. Like, there'll be some level of comfort there. I think he's ready for the big time. I imagine he's a day 1 starting corner. And if he has 5 picks and 2 pick sixes in Big 12 play next year, he's an all-conference guy, right? So, like, I think there is a ceiling of his that will be an all-conference thing. It's, does he have the same kind of window? Like, at 165, if other teams can scheme him into the run game, Houston may need to rotate him into less involved situations, right? Like put him on the backside or whatever, right? Or if the speed of the Big 12 play is a big jump, it might take him a couple weeks, and those couple weeks without any stats or without good stats where he gets burned once or twice in the first couple games. Like, those things could take adjusting, and I could see how he doesn't get there. That's why he's not in this first, trio of guys. But his ceiling is definitely, like, all Big 12 is below his ceiling is probably the best way to put that, right? So he could definitely get there. I think he can get there in the single season year. We'll see how that goes, right? The last guy that's all Big 12 capable is Latrell McCutcheon. I'm speaking too fast, but I'm trying to get all these guys in because I got a lot of them. Latrell McCutcheon is a 6'1", 185-pound corner with crazy length. Was a 4-star DB out of Austin LBJ High School. Went to OU. When that whole staff on Lincoln Riley to USC, he up and moved with them out to USC. He's more of a nickel slot corner, kind of playing, again, more inside the box. That typically, again, like I said, adds up to a lot of stats. Those stats could get you on an all Big 12 team. But he also knows and understands Power 5 football. He played in the Big 12 as a freshman and got a lot of snaps as a true freshman, and was then at USC, played in the Pac-12. Again, was a regular starter for the USC. They didn't. I guess they didn't win the Pac-12. They lost to Utah in the game, and then in the title game, whatever. But a very good USC team, and he is a regular starter for them. In both instances, as a freshman at OU and a sophomore at USC, he had above average pass coverage grades as a slot corner and nickel guy. Admittedly, the thing that was kind of up and down on his ratings was some games he tackled well, some games he didn't. And so in the run game kind of stuff, if he continues to develop and Houston can get him right in those areas, I don't really see a flaw in McCutcheon's game in watching him play. I know that there was the big Xavier Worthy beef, Xavier Worthy being the UT Austin receiver. That was like licking his chops or whatever when he saw McCutcheon in, because one of his 2 touchdowns in the Texas OU game, McCutcheon Jared OU, was on McCutcheon. For what it's worth, Worthy had a big game, that OU game. That really did happen. 260 yards or something, right? Crazy game. But he had 9 catches, and 3 of them were on McCutcheon, and only one of his 2 touchdowns was. And frankly, wasn't the touchdown, but one of the 3 catches, I felt like there was missing safety help in that. So anyway, I don't mean to say that Xavier Worthy is not good or whatever. I would never say that, but I will say that I think that has been somewhat overblown because they had other DBs on Xavier Worthy for a lot of the game. McCutcheon's a very talented kid, and I think that, again, he's a kid that has all Big 12 was below his ceiling, and I think he could get there. He might be more realistic to get there later in his college career, right? He's got more than 1 year at Houston left, so we'll see. But I could see him getting there at some point, so why not being this fall? If you got another transfer that you think I missed that has all Big 12 potential, or if you want to talk more about transfers coming in or other aspects of transfers that are coming in, tell me in the comments down below, or find me. I was about to say find me on Twitter, but I guess it's X or whatever. Find me on social media, Twitter, X, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you go to social media at Painsworth512, Painsworth 512. I'll be happy to talk all things Houston Cougar football, transfer, etc. Tomorrow, we're talking more about Houston Cougar basketball as well. I also love talking about the Rockets, the Astros, and all those kinds of things. So make sure you find me at Painsworth512. Again, that's Painsworth 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all your favorite social media handles. If you're looking for a second listen today, first of all, I want to say thank you for making us your first. Second listen, I'm going to recommend Locked On Sports Today. They're covering the latest topics of each and every day in the most locked on way possible, talking to all kinds of Locked On guests and hosts. So make sure you check them out. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Cougs your first listen today. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Wait. Every day. If you are an everydayer and you start listing comments, you get to this point, list some comments, list in the comments section on YouTube. I can speak, I promise. List in the comment section on YouTube a question or 2. We'll start answering those questions in the third segments of episodes to make sure that people that are listening every day and listening all the way through get rewarded. So down below, list a question with the hashtag everydayer, and at some point, we may answer it. Thanks so much for being Locked On Cougs first listen today. Locked On Cougs, Prime Minister Podcast Network, your team every day. Go Cougs.